All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, good morning or afternoon to everybody, depending on where you are. This is the Showcase webinar series. My name's Jonah Hobson. I'm the Director of Customer Success with ITI, and thanks for joining us today. This is actually our first Showcase webinar of 2017. Just with the holidays and everything going on and getting settled in the new year, we're happy to be here for this this presentation. We have Chris Machut from Netarus with us, and he'll be leading the presentation today. Very applicable topic to everybody involved, certainly everybody who's registered for the webinar, and probably a lot more employees than you realize. But we're just looking at the consequences, whether it's positive, negative, unintended, intentional, of using visual aid technologies when dealing with mobile tower or overhead cranes. So I'll go through a couple intro slides here briefly, and then I'll turn things over to Chris. So for new folks who haven't joined us in the past, the why of ITI is right there, plain and simple. We exist to serve and learn every day, and that principle kind of guides everything that we do, whether it's developing new training material or curriculum, or looking at new technologies and how we can incorporate that into the best practices, and even on the support staff side of things, just everything we do, being more efficient and doing what we can to help everybody. I very briefly want to thank Lifting Gear Hire. They sponsored the Showcase webinar series. They've actually had a couple sessions where they presented as well, but anything equipment needs that you guys need for, as you can see on the screen there, hoisting, pulling, jacking, rigging, safety, check out Lifting Gear Hire, and they probably have what you need. So briefly, ITI, we're all about training solutions. As I mentioned before, we carry those solutions out primarily in these 6 areas. So we have instructor-led training that's conducted at training centers throughout North America, the United States and Canada, as well as going to client locations. That's probably, 80% of the training that we do is going to the clients and conducting the training at their site for their whole team. We have some e-learning options, and that's been growing in the past few years, definitely. We're expanding that library, and it's just another way to get the information and knowledge to everyone. Our field services, our consulting branch, and then you may have heard of our new virtual reality training. So we have a virtual reality mobile crane simulator. I can talk about a little more at the end, as well as a reference center, which is our bookstore. So Chris is the Chief Technology Officer at Netarus. He's a proud Hokie, attended Virginia Tech. And yeah, just a bit about Netarus. So there's 3 different platforms they have: hoist cam, tug cam, and 360 cam. But basically, and this is what Chris is going to talk about in the presentation today, it's just, again, it's leveraging technology and becoming more efficient and smarter and safer with what is really a very risky thing that we're doing every day. The load handling industry, any work with any sort of cranes and hoisting, it inherently risky. So really good stuff, and thank you to Chris for coming on. Last thing for me, if you guys do have questions, which I hope you do during the presentation, please enter them in the question pane on your little GoToWebinar dashboard there. I will be collecting those as we're going through here, and then we should have some time at the end where I can get the questions to Chris, and he can answer them here live. Whatever we don't get to, I'll still take them. I'll get them to Chris, and we can post those along with the recording of this session and email you directly. So please take advantage of that. So that's it for me. I am going to turn things over to Chris at this time, and once he gets his screen up and going, I'm going to let him take it away. So Chris, I think, yeah, I can see your screen. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jonah. Hope everybody can hear me okay. My name's Chris Machut. I'm Chief Technology Officer with Netarus here in Norfolk, Virginia. Today I'm going to share with you the positive, negative, and unintended consequences of visual aid technologies, especially in the application of cranes, be them from tower cranes, overhead cranes, mobile cranes. A lot of this presentation just focuses around providing you as either management or operators themselves with a little more information when you're evaluating different safety devices that also help increase productivity and ultimately make us more safe. Just a little bit about us, like it said, our background has been in rapidly deployable situational awareness platforms, where I like to reference that we like to eliminate blind spots, make things safer for people. Today's agenda, I plan on speaking for about 45 minutes or so, but we'll be touching on a number of different things, everywhere from what exactly is situational awareness to different visual aid technologies that are available for heavy equipment today. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of the pros, cons, and unintended consequences, which is the really interesting part. I like really going over and usually drums up a lot of questions and feedback. And last, talking a little bit more about the applications, talking a little bit more about the specific technologies that are out there and what are actually being done even beyond just the operator for safety and productivity on heavy equipment. So first, just get a little bit of background. What exactly is situational awareness? If you guys have ever seen this picture before, but I like drawing a conclusion that situational awareness removes these kind of blinders, making you more aware of those obstacles and those things and activities around you. And we'll spend about 5-10 minutes just making sure that we're all understanding just the terminology behind it and where it kind of comes from. If we actually want to get into the military definition of situational awareness, here it is. The key thing that I like to draw from it is basically the last 3 lines in here. And situational awareness is what is happening in our environment with regards to the operation. We all know how much the environment can impact us on a daily basis, especially an operator, those working in and around the operator, such as your riggers or even service techs. Everyone being at the top of their awareness is just an extremely important thing to have. And we'll kind of break this situational awareness into 3 different kind of subcategories. You have your experience that you really tap into if you're a crane operator. You have your inputs, so you have your data coming at you. You have the information that's available to you. Do you have a load chart? Do you have a camera system? Do you have an LMI system? And then finally, the communication. Communication really impacts the operation of these heavy equipment operators, as does it impact those that are working around them. And everything from multiple languages to everyone making sure that they're all speaking English, or that if it's an English job site, or if they're actually using the proper hand signals. So just kind of getting consistency in terminology that I'll be referencing potentially from time to time. If you humor me on our block representation here of a tower crane, we'll talk about when the trolley is moving in or out, or the pitch of the hook block, either going up or down, or then the actual tower crane moving, yawing or slewing from left to right. So situational awareness also, you'll see SA referenced a couple times in here because of the word situational awareness is just really long to type. But there's all different areas of situational awareness that we really have to make sure that we, as not only as management but also those as operators, are aware of in terms of the different levels, the correct levels, losing situational awareness, some barriers to situational awareness, how to maintain it, going over some of the human errors related to situational awareness, some time critical tasks, and some of these situational awareness aids that are available to us. So starting at kind of the top, the levels of awareness all kind of start at an unaware state. We all kind of, when you wake up first thing in the morning, that's being unaware. Somebody's sleeping in their cab and then waking up, you're unaware to what just had transpired in the previous second prior to waking up. That's an example of being in an unaware state. A relaxed state is a state where you're aware of your surroundings, but maybe not actively doing something, maybe not actively engaging a task or performing a task. Heightened alertness is where you begin to sense that there is an issue. You all of a sudden feel the wind blow a little bit as an operator and notice that the load is maybe moving a little bit farther to the left than you wanted it to. High alert is when you get to the point of near panic. This is the high alert level, is a level of pretty much extreme caution. That wind blowing, the load moving to the left, and now you feel like you're going to hit something, someone, or something. And the last, which is absolutely the worst state to be in, is a freeze, which is when you can no longer cope with that high alert, that high anxiety, and you're completely locking up. You're not reactive, you're not responding to any of the information provided to you around that operation. And that's kind of the pyramid state that you go into as you do a lift. And we'll kind of walk through that here in a few minutes of going up all these different levels, from a relaxed state to a heightened state, to a high alert state, to then going back to completing that task. For those of you that maybe, and I may be butchering this a bit because I do not have a military background, but this is also referred to as the OODA loop, or I call it the OODA loop. And there's some other references, the U.S. Air Force. If you guys want to look it up a little bit more after this presentation, highly recommend just going on Google and looking up the OODA loop, and you can learn a little bit more about this pyramid. But let's kind of talk about it in the context of a crane operation, and potentially stepping through all these stages to kind of draw that analogy a little bit further. Never, ever, ever as an operator do you ever want to be in an unaware state, taking a nap, relaxing, outside of actually relaxing, but actually closing your eyes or tuning out when operating that piece of equipment. The best state to ever be in when not performing a task is a relaxed state when applying it to this situational awareness pyramid or the OODA loop. Being in a relaxed state allows you to then respond when you receive that information, that communication, of being able to place the boom in the proper position, which puts you into a more of a heightened state. You're now moving the crane. You're now having to be aware of many, many variables, many, many factors that you're taking in this information and making important decisions. From there, you get into you are still in your heightened state when you begin picking the load. And then once the load is landed, we go back into a relaxed state. There are some issues around, and I don't really get into it too much in this slide deck, but this is where fatigue comes in to a lot of operators. Those operators that are persistently in this heightened state can be detrimental not only to their performance, but also their ability to do quality, good picks. It's always something to be aware of, at least from our experiences, of being mindful of the number of picks done each day, the quantity, and so on and so forth. So what are some examples of losing situational awareness? I'll touch on these each very briefly, but everything from just being confused in terms of not getting the right hand signal, to having that gut feeling that maybe this pick isn't right. Fixation or preoccupation, just had their wife or their boss yell at them and they're trying to figure out what had happened, which kind of gets into the unresolved discrepancies. Some improper procedures, so given improper information that may contradict the normal, let's say the normal load capacity of the crane. Maybe an 80-ton crane and you're trying to do a 95-ton lift. Ambiguity of the information coming at the operator, or just plain being distracted. And there's in the distracted category, I'm going to touch on that a bit. It's probably one of the biggest distraction points are things like cell phones and somebody maybe text messaging or Facebooking when they should be doing their job. Some barriers to situational awareness to always kind of really have your eyes placed on and always aware of include poor communication, overload with too much work to be done, fatigue even prior to coming in, not even getting a good night's rest, perception, excessive motivation to get things done, or just flat out complacency. So how do we maintain situational awareness? Well, we achieve this or maintain situational awareness through clarifying the information that we're providing, continually assessing our surroundings and what is going on, communicating with those, not only with ourselves, but with those around us in a consistent manner, demonstrating that we're able to actually perform those tasks, and also working with the information that we're provided and properly acting upon it. Human error, as many of you probably know, is the vast majority of mistakes that actually occur with a lot of these pieces of heavy equipment, from basic slips and mistakes to errors that are just done because of inattentivity, of not paying attention to what's going on. How do we improve situational awareness? There's a lot of different ways of doing it. Situational awareness, just from a high-level standpoint, training. That's why we're here today. We're trying to learn about situational awareness and the impact of visual aid technologies. Also experience. There's a big difference between a crane operator that's been operating the crane for the last 1 or 2 years and one that's been doing it for the last 30 years. They just have that experience of knowing not only how the crane operates, but also the feel of a crane in terms of how it moves and how it maneuvers. Using the appropriate kinds of sensors, such as a good LMI system, can really go a long way to providing that operator with the information that he needs to make better, more informed decisions. And reviewing different technologies and relevant information that's provided to them so that they can make a better, more informed decision, not just on the weight of the load, but what is also going in and around that load. So time-critical tasks when it comes to situational awareness, there's basically 2 different kinds. You have your standard and your non-standard. So if you kind of imagine a standard task is a task, if you look on the left here, is a task where you're doing the same exact pick day in and day out. A good example of this might be a crane operator in a steel mill who's maybe picking rolled steel from point A to point B, and he has to do it 80 times before his next break. A non-standard pick might be a crane operator who on a tower crane on a construction site, who in the first 10 minutes is required to do 1 or 2 picks of rebar onto the deck of a building. In the next 10 minutes needs to move tools and equipment from the 5th floor to the 25th floor of the building, and then another 10 minutes later moving concrete in a bucket from the very first floor to the very top floor. Everyone and everything on the job site affects situational awareness. Everything from the operator to obviously the safety personnel who are there to help motivate and help make sure everybody is on the same page with their tasks and goals for the day to make sure that they're done safely. All the job site personnel, the job site personnel have just as much of an effect on the momentum that crane operator moves as the crane operator themselves. If everyone isn't in sync from a communication standpoint to a situational awareness standpoint, a lot of chaos happens. And last, management being aware of the time critical tasks that have to be done and understanding those tasks that have to be done and that they can be done in a timely, safe manner. So I think we've beaten up situational awareness a bit here. Try to keep it to about 10 minutes just so we're have the same kind of terminology that across the rest of these slides here. And really looking forward to your questions as we get a little bit more into this. But the next thing we're going to get into is a little bit more on the visual aid technologies that are available on heavy equipment. And I think that's some of the interest that's out there. When looking into visual aid technologies, or that for short, you'll see that referenced in some of the slides in here, VAT. We want to define the kinds of visual aid technologies we're looking at. What do, ultimately, not only the technologies themselves, but the tasks that we want to do. Next step is to make sure that these visual aid technologies are properly applied to the lift plans. Are you going to be flying by these cameras? Are you going to be flying by these lasers or LMI indicators, and how are you going to, the next step being using them? How are you going to apply those technologies as a part of your lift and planning accurately? And finally, understanding where the liability side lands. At the end of the day, the crane operator is the captain of his ship, and I by no means am an attorney, and I'm not trying to have a debate at all about the liability aspect of all of using these visual aid technologies. That could in and of itself be its own very, very interesting discussion. But at the end of the day, the crane operator needs to be provided. I think everybody agrees. The crane operator needs to be provided with the best information that he possibly can to make the best decisions that he can. And whatever we can do to help him with that, we as an organization or a company always have to look at and understand that the tools that we provide to them is going to help him and not hinder him in his task. If it makes his life less stressful, he's less in that heightened or even freeze state of situational awareness, that is better not only for the operator, but everyone that works around that job site. Visual aid technologies can be simple as a side view mirror in a car. I've even seen some very well implemented strategically placed mirrors on some mobile cranes that allow you to, the operator to very quickly see behind him maybe what's going on the winch of the crane. Some of these other visual aid technologies extend beyond even just that operator. They extend to like an iPad or even to a security camera system or a high-mounted camera that gives kind of an overall view of what's going on. At the end of the day, all of these technologies are providing a means to extend the line of sight for the individual that is using them. Here's just some examples from the security standpoint. On the bottom left-hand corner, you have a mock-up command and control center. It's not necessarily applicable directly to that crane operator, but wouldn't it be nice if management had 18 different job sites and they could actually see what's going on at 18 of those different job sites if somebody calls them up and says, hey, we need help, we're not understanding what's going on here. Well, can you show me what's going on? Pull out a cell phone maybe, do a FaceTime session or Google Hangouts or something like that to be able to see what is transpiring without actually being there at that specific location when you can't be there in a timely manner. Some of these other aids include the sensors, sensor devices that I've kind of beaten up LMI systems a little bit here, but that's an example of a sensor. to cameras, which is something more obvious. Your laser sensors in terms of gauging or measuring distance, or even triggering alarms on particular events occurring of somebody or something being within a certain area. To lighting, things as basic as lighting is a situational awareness aid, is a visual aid technology. Improper lighting can be disastrous for someone's situational awareness and not being able to see what is going on and around them. Hand communication, very important in terms of situational awareness and understanding what's going on, especially in the aspect of a radio not being maybe immediately available and being able to signal operator correctly. Anti-collision systems. I've been on a couple sites myself where tower cranes have been equipped with these anti-collision systems, which when configured correctly are amazing. They're wonderful technologies. We'll get into a little bit more on the anecdotal story side here in the unintended consequences section, but that's some really, really interesting stories that we've personally experienced where the visual aid technologies or these situational awareness technologies can negatively impact the job site if not configured correctly. An anti-two block device is great for creating a significant amount of downtime on your crane, and yeah, we'll leave that there. Definitely a great system to have. Your load sensing device, or the LMI, I've been using the LMI term for a while now. LMI being a load sensing device as well. Your backup cameras, alarms, and even the positioning of your cameras. Now, believe it or not, this is actually not a completely overblown model. We've had some companies that we've interacted in the past that actually apply different techniques for the placement and how each of those cameras are used as mounted on this particular tower crane. We can go into a little bit more detail of all the benefits of what each would do a little bit later on in the slides. I'll show on some of the applications of how each of these cameras can benefit not only the operator, but everyone else that's around that job site. Blind picks are one of the more pervasive, say dangerous and nerve-wracking maneuvers for many crane operators. And I kid you not, we actually had one time with our company from another country, someone called us up and we told them the price of one of our systems. And they told us at the price that we were paying for them in their country, or that they would have to pay for our system, they could hire 20 people to stand out on the length of the boom. It has to make you chuckle sometimes. I kind of go back to the story of even if I have 20 other people on the length of that boom, it's still not going to make me as an operator more confident that 20 different people talking to me at the same time trying to tell me what I'm seeing is not going to make me move any quicker. It's not going to make me move any safer. And if I can't see on the other side of that blind lift, it's going to provide me with zero benefit to that pick. Camera systems themselves, when it comes to situational awareness and visual aid technologies, can be placed on all different types of locations. You can have your view from the hook block, so that operator can see not only, if you look at the top left-hand corner here where it's referenced the hook block, we can not only see where each of the people that are positioned below the block, but we can also see what is going on and what is being picked at that particular point in time. You have your camera systems that can also be mounted to see the winch If it's a larger piece of equipment and maybe a mirror can't be seen, a simple winch camera, when properly mounted, can give an operator that critical line of sight to see how the winch is properly, making sure the winch is properly spooling. And last, even a site overview. In your site overview, you'll see on the bottom left-hand corner here, that's a view of a hook block that is having to do a pick literally within inches of a wall, a brand new poured wall. On the right-hand side is the view from the operator's cab of how far away he was from that wall. It's actually, the hook block is at the, let's see if my pointer's here, the hook block is actually right here in this view on the left here. So a lift plan. A good lift plan will have some of these key elements defined, such as your list of picks that are going to be perhaps performed during that particular lift. Includes maybe a daily inspection of that crane, and also references how and where visual aid technologies, or VAT, are being used for that particular lift. And after the crane is shut down for the evening, or at the end of that lift, what should actually transpire with those visual aid technology systems? For instance, if it's a wired camera, should a power switch just be turned off? If it's a wireless camera, does it have any batteries that maybe need to be recharged? Are there lights that may need to be turned on at a particular point in time? Or are those lights on sensors that will automatically turn on? It sounds like a pretty obvious question, but if that power switch isn't available for that operator to turn it on, you might have some issues. Just briefly touching over, knowing that we have lights at the end of the day, knowing that our cameras are properly charged, and knowing that the technologies that we're using are in good working order. Here's a list, getting a little more specific into what I was referring to, of the different types of visual aid technology questions that you should really consider before deploying. What's the impact of power on the site? Are you going to have 220 AC, 110 AC, 12 volt DC, 24 volt DC? In the case of an overhead crane application, are you actually maybe on a trolley that has 250 volt DC, and you want to mount a camera on the trolley without the use of battery packs? Also understand the amount of installation time that it's going to take. Taking a crane down for a certain period of time impacts the momentum of that site, be it in a facility or a factory, or be it on a construction site. Understanding the amount of time it takes to install this equipment is extremely important. Next is understanding the difference between wired and wireless technology. Kind of implying the obvious side of it, wireless tends to involve batteries. With batteries, either requires one of two things: the batteries to be swapped out after a certain period of time, or the batteries to be recharged after a certain period of time. From an installation standpoint, wired is significantly more painful than wireless. So the upfront installation time might be more difficult. However, the ongoing potential for maintenance might be lower. Where on wireless, you might have to charge batteries. But with wireless, gives you the flexibility to locate those visual aid technologies wherever you need them. And last, another really good point to consider when evaluating different visual aid technologies is recording. Is there a benefit of recording what these cameras, sensors are seeing? Should there be a data logger, effectively, a black box? When deploying these systems, understanding the height of the equipment is extremely important. Is it going to be 1,000 feet up in the air, or is it going to be 1,000 feet under the water? All of that dictates the kind of wired, wireless, range, battery length, camera angle. There's a number of things to consider when your equipment is located at different heights. Your type of equipment also dictates what kind of visual aid technology you want to use. A forklift system, camera system, is going to be entirely different than a lattice boom with a 250-foot main jib with or let's say a 250-foot telescopic jib with a 250-foot lattice boom attachment onto it, luffing lattice boom attachment on the end of it. To a top crane that may have 150 foot of stick or boom on from the operator's cab on it. Each of those cranes are going to have different requirements based off of how and where the crane is located and what you're trying to accomplish. For the most part, there's really only 3 types of cameras when it really boils down to it. There's others, like different types of lenses and different types of like 3D capabilities. That's just multiple. It's just different ways of implementing one of these 3 different types of cameras. There's day, which is typically in color. Night, which is 99% of the time in black and white. There are some cameras out there that can give you a little bit of color at night. And then there's thermal, where you actually detect heat, which can be useful in a number of various different applications. And last thing to consider when evaluating a visual aid system are these 3 points. What's the temperature ranges for your applications? Do you need water ingress protection? And most importantly, corrosive, like if it's on a, is it on a saltwater environment where saltwater can potentially damage the lenses or even the circuitry or even the connections? And effectively, is it rugged enough to be in the environment that you're putting it into? Can that camera system put up with not only the equipment that it is around, but the people that are using it? Visual aid technologies are an aid. Always, always, always emphasize with your operators, with those around them, that these are aids and they're not to circumvent standard operational procedures or safety practices. They're outstanding for verifying placement and orientation of loads. And I will repeat this probably several more times, but these visual aid technologies are an aid or an assist. They should never be solely relied upon on any application for operating any piece of hardware. A single camera can never provide the amount of information that a user or operator themselves can provide without substantially more technologies added into the system. So there's talk of even a remote operation of cranes. You may not necessarily have the operator anywhere in the cab. It's very common, like in ports even, and those are just operated a lot of times by machines. But those machines are equipped with so many more sensors than just one camera. So thinking that you can deploy one camera and be able to eliminate an operator from that particular location is not ever a good choice. There's a lot more to consider when deploying visual aid technologies. Let's go into those. What are those other considerations? I have about 15 more minutes here, and we will get into the pros first. We can eliminate completely being blind in a blind lift. Now, this doesn't mean getting rid of blind lift procedures. All blind lift procedures should always be followed. But if that operator can see or load orientation, where people are positioned, it makes his life considerably less stressful. It provides him with information, even just briefly, of what's going on during that blind lift, not just relying on hand signals or radios. Increase in productivity. We've seen numbers and we've had anecdotal comments from operators of anywhere from 10 to 60% increase in productivity. It all depends on the application. I can tell you just from experience of interacting with the number of operators that we have over the years, the one universal thing that always tends to resonate is the fact that they're no longer guessing what is going on with the load. They can see what's going on with the load and those that are around them. How they use it impacts their positioning. Their load alignment, and visually confirming where the load is placed. From the rigging to the people that are actually doing the rigging, and verifying that the person that's actually radioing them is the person that actually did put that load onto that hook block for them. Ultimately increasing safety for everyone across that job site. Let's get into the little more area of gray of the unintended consequences of using visual aid technologies. I encourage you, if you would like to learn more about it, it's called the Hawthorne effect. But my very, very quick and short and sweet explanation, my version of it, is if someone's being watched, they're going to behave differently. Or if they feel they're being watched, they're going to behave differently. And although it might be a temporary effect, the Hawthorne effect basically says if they feel they're being watched, there's almost always a 10 to 20% increase in productivity, just by the fact of a visual aid technology that somebody is aware of is in and around them. The effect is often temporary, but it is a very interesting effect. The next side is the fear. And a lot of times it just comes down to ignorance and not understanding what these systems are here for. Is this big brother watching me? No, this is, you want the crane operator to see you where the load is. Because the last thing you want to do is ever have a dangerous load going over your head. And that operator, that's the last thing he wants to do, is ever have to risk anyone's life. And if he can be aware of it, if he can understand it, he can make better, more informed decisions. The concern over trust is an interesting one when deploying these. And these last two, the big brother and the invasion of privacy, a lot of times are addressed almost immediately by making sure others actually understand what these cameras are being deployed for. And oftentimes, it's always after the incident happens, not before it. We're being proactive about safety. That's why we're deploying these cameras. Safer operator means a safer job site. And finally is operator perceived liability. There's been for years now, there's been an interesting argument as to if the operator can see, is he more liable? From everything that I've heard, that operator is the captain of his ship. He is liable for whatever happens, regardless if he can see or not. If you take a stance of it's safer for me not to see than to see, that's a dangerous position to take. I honestly would much rather be able to see and make a better decision, enable me to make a better decision to prevent an incident than intentionally not being able to see because of where liability lies. And finally, let's touch on some of the cons of virtual or of visual aid technologies. There's concerns of them being a distraction for the operator. Used inappropriately, absolutely. If that operator can't be trusted with that device and decides to point the device instead of at the load inside the hotel room, maybe of a hotel that's next to their crane, and using it to look in someone's window instead of the job site, that's a distraction, and that's an inappropriate use of that system. Install time and availability. Understanding that most systems require at least 2 minutes and as much as an entire day, if not more, to install. It all depends on all of the variables mentioned earlier. Is it wireless? Is it wired? Are you doing recording option? What size monitors are you using? Are you having to mount antennas? What's your power source? There's a lot of considerations and how much of that was set up in advance. Micro positioning. There is not a system on the planet that exists today that can give you the ability to, within fractions of an inch from a single camera, that doesn't mean additional lasers and sensors and things like that, but from a single camera, that can have you move a load from a tower crane within fractions of an inch. I'm talking like 1/16 of an inch positioning. It's just not possible with just one device. And that's where a lot of automation systems come into play, a lot of other sensors come into play. A camera system should always be used as looking from a macro positioning, trying to position something within a couple inches of a pallet or a couple inches of where the beam may need to be positioned, and then you have the rigger position, do the micro positioning for that operator from there. Incorrectly installed or configured can also cause a lot of issues on a job site. And using visual aid technologies and applications where these extreme conditions, so using a camera system that's maybe only rated to 100 degrees Fahrenheit in a steel mill that requires them to be, that has maybe ambient temperatures in excess of 180 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure you have the right visual aid system with the right specifications for your application. And that's where we get into applications. Do all these pictures have in common? Scuba diver with a shark behind them. I think that's an elk with an alligator in the water. The fox with all the hounds. They are blind to what is going on in and around them. These forklifts of people walking under loads, of straddling between a wall and a forklift, to going for the world record forklift stack. All very dangerous and should never be, and no visual aid technology will help you with that. Having our safety meeting in the back of a piece of heavy equipment, to trying to get a whole fleet of people onto that heavy equipment. Applications range from using these camera systems to view the job site, to give the crane operator in a tower crane direct line of sight on his load on a hook block, be able to see multiple split screen views of not only what's going on in the load, but what's going on around that piece of equipment. Here's a view from your hook block of a hook block mounted system such as what we developed, a hoist cam, to remote access capabilities from systems such as our hoist cam director, being able to remotely see what is going on, and in some cases even being able to pan, tilt, and zoom that camera in to get more detail from the bird's eye view that a crane operator has. To even analyzing and generating important information from that job site with the visual aid technology and with cameras to create 3D point clouds or digital surface maps of a job site, which general contractors are constantly trying to do, which is match what is being built and constructed in the real world to what was designed and quoted for their customers in a virtual world. As a company with hoist cam in our systems, we do all wireless encryption to help maintain a reliable signal. There's things to consider such as repeaters if it was around big, large structures, to digital video recorders, winch cameras, job site overview cameras, ignition protection rating. Do you also need pan tilt zoom capabilities where they can actually with a joystick zoom in, zoom out, and change the orientation of the lens? Remote internet enabled systems and systems that can work on various different types of power sources. I'll leave you guys with this story and wrap up here as a final example of where visual aid technologies may have happened. This was several years ago. Probably, I think it's now approaching almost 4 years ago. This was in New York, a crawler crane, and I'm going to be paraphrasing it pretty substantially. This operator was lifting pallets, or lifting, let's keep it to pallets right now. He was lifting one pallet at a time that entire day. He was doing a standard versus non-standard lift. So his lift was consistent that entire day of doing a blind pick from the other side of this building. At the end of the shift, the riggers saw that there were 3 pallets left and they were ready to go home. At the end of their shift, and on the last pick, instead of putting one of the pallets onto the load, they attached 3. That operator ultimately received communication from his rigging team to start the lift. And as he started the lift, for a lift that was exceeded well beyond the rating capacity of that crane, and not being able to see the riggers that had loaded a load onto his hook block that exceeded the capacity of his crane, caused the crane and the boom to collapse. Is there a new standard for blind and distant lifts? Should more be done to make sure people are educated of these visual aid technologies that not only help increase productivity, but ultimately make the job site more productive. My name is Chris Machut, Chief Technology Officer with Netarus. This concludes our presentation overview, and be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris, so much just for everything. It's really good to see some of those examples for sure, and just understanding all of the applications, definitely of visual aid technology, and then just some options with you guys at HoistCam as I mean, an expert in the field, obviously, and I don't even know how many clients you currently serve, but clearly something's working, and like you said, it's an aid and an assist to the best practices that are in place. And again, I mentioned at the very top of this, it's inherently risky. Load handling and any hoisting and load moving is inherently risky. So anything that can help in the process and make it better is definitely something to look into. So there were a couple questions, kind of stuff that we can handle. It's one-on-one, offline. So unless somebody has something that comes in here in the next minute or two, I think we're going to pass on those. There wasn't any kind of overarching things that would apply to multiple folks on the line. I do want to make note of, you guys can see Chris's screen right now, that HoistCam, so they're Netarus, one of the platforms, they are going to be at ConExpo. So I know that's coming up here in March, and a lot of folks on the line are probably attending, or their companies are attending, so it'd be great to go check them out. Chris, do you have anything to add on the ConExpo thing?
Yeah, if anybody does want to learn more about the systems, we will be at ConExpo in Las Vegas, March 7th through I think it's the 12th. We will be at the Gold Hall, also near ITI as well too. But we'll be featuring HoistCam and HoistCam Director in our booth there, and then we'll be featuring our analytics engine, our newly released Sitetracks.io, in the tech experience, which we're really excited to be doing that too. So if there's any additional questions from a camera perspective about what maybe different technologies, even our experience, and that we can share with you to make your environment safer, please do let us know.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And I just grabbed the screen back briefly, but that information's there. So the HoistCam's booth in the Gold Hall, as well as the tech experience, where that's going to be located. And you can learn more at netarus.com/ConExpo 2017. And as far as the ITI booth is concerned, like Chris said, we'll also be in the Gold Hall. You can learn more, and you can actually schedule a demo for, we will have 3 virtual reality simulators in our booth, 2 mobile crane simulators, as well as aerial work platform simulator. So if you hadn't had a chance to experience virtual reality first of all, and then see how it can be applicable to training, and again, just figuring out those best practices and doing everything to the best of our abilities, definitely come check us out. Schedule yourself a demo, and yeah, or contact me if you have any questions. So we don't, no other questions are coming in. So I think with that, Chris, thank you again. We can, well, I'll definitely, we'll get this recording up. Like I said, we record the session. If you guys weren't able to catch it live, we'll have some contact information as well. And if there are any other questions that come up, get them to me, jonah@iti.com, or we can get them straight to Chris. But one way or another, we can get you guys an answer, or consult, or whatever it is that you need. So thank you again, Chris. That's all from me. I'll let you have the last word if you want to, and then we'll sign off.
Yes, thank you everyone again for your time. Chris Machut with Netarus. That's netarus.com. I look forward to seeing any of you at ConExpo here in the next couple of weeks.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us on the Showcase webinar series, and until next time, we'll see you later.